This special show starts first with the developments in the Tata Docomo case. The Delhi High Court has slammed the Reserve Bank of India today. The RBI opposed the consent terms filed by the Tatas and Docomo. Remember, last month, Tata Sons had agreed to pay around $1.2 billion in damages to Japan's entity Docomo in their long-standing dispute. That's what their contract required. Following this, both the sides decided to approach the court to accept their settlement and present their consent. Ashmit Kumar, who was in the court when the case was argued, is with us. Ashmit, exactly what happened in the court? What were the arguments presented on behalf of the RBI, and what did the judge have to say?
Well, today was, of course, the much-awaited reply by the RBI, and the RBI has now, by way of its submissions, has clarified its position that it is opposed to the consent terms that have been filed in the Delhi High Court. What the RBI essentially is arguing is that it is maintaining its earlier position that the put clause in the agreement is in fact illegal. Their stance effectively is that what could not have been done directly cannot be done now indirectly through this arbitral award, which is interestingly an old argument that the Tatas had used. Further, the RBI goes on to say that this arbitral award, this is something which perhaps could need an RBI nod. It cannot be proceeded with in this current shape or form, and that it is principally opposed to this transaction the way it is currently structured, with Tata Sons choosing to remit the money to Docomo. Now, what's critical here is the observations of the Delhi High Court. Delhi High Court, mind you, was quite critical of the RBI's position. The Delhi High Court questioned the RBI if it wanted to set a negative precedent, a precedent wherein the RBI was coming forward and blocking an arbitral award. Further, the Delhi High Court also went on to question if the RBI had any powers at all to go ahead and to question such an award, leave alone block it. Further, the Delhi High Court also observed that this is a case which involves consent terms between two sides, where perhaps the RBI does not have any locus to intervene and then to subsequently block this transaction. And that is essentially the position that the Delhi High Court has taken. What's also interesting is that the Delhi High Court has observed that, as has been seen previously, where the RBI had done a U-turn from its earlier stance. RBI, just to remind our viewers, initially was not opposed to this transaction. Later, on consulting the Finance Ministry, had reversed its position. In reference to that, the Delhi High Court again today observed that the latest position of the RBI, questioning the RBI, that has this position been arrived at independently or in consultation with the Finance Minister, even going to the extent of saying that perhaps this is an issue which deals with the autonomy of the RBI itself, and to see and to verify whether or not the RBI is acting actually independently or in hands and glove with the government. But nonetheless, the sum and substance is that the onus now falls on the RBI. The Delhi High Court has made it very clear.
Yeah, did RBI reply to that?
Go back to the drawing board and clarify whether or not they have any powers.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't RBI have to reply today?
Well, there hasn't been any response forthcoming.
All right.
Well, indeed, that was the initial outset. That was the understanding that the RBI would come forth and clarify its position. But the one point where the Delhi High Court has now narrowed down the entire discussion to is the powers, if any, are available with the RBI, wherein it can use those powers to block an arbitral award. That's the one point now. That's the one sticky point that remains, that the RBI now has to clarify on. The next key date to watch for will be March 14th. That's Tuesday, right after Holi, when the RBI Council will have to clarify of whether or not they have the powers, and subsequent to that, the Delhi High Court will take a call on how to allow this transaction going forward.
Right, Ashmit. So you clearly and very rightfully had rightly pointed out last time also, that from a Tata versus Docomo case, it is turning out to Tata Docomo versus the RBI case, and that's that clarification could come on March 14th. But let's take this pertinent point forward with Sailesh Haribhakti, who's joining us on the phone line from Mumbai. Sailesh, a very important point that has really come out of the Tata Docomo case versus now the RBI. The Delhi High Court directs RBI to clarify if it has the powers to oppose an arbitral award. Remember, this arbitral award was given in London against Tata Sons to provide $1.7 billion to Docomo, entity Docomo. What is your view on this particular bit? 14th March is when RBI will have to come up with clarifications in the Delhi High Court.
So my view is that RBI need not be seen to be opposing an arbitral award which has been given by the Honorable Arbitral Tribunal in London. RBI is simply minding its own treasury. Exactly. Every dollar that comes for the use of India has to be disposed of at the will of RBI. So RBI can simply say that they have nothing to do with any arbitral award. They are only going to act as the custodian of India's foreign exchange. And in that role, they might take the view that if an outflow of 1.7 billion has to be done, then it might need to follow the guidelines that were required to be followed at the time when the put option got actually exercised.
Okay. No, Shailesh, at issue over here is the original position whether by paying 1.2 billion, the Docomo entity has ensured for itself an assured return, which is something the Indian law doesn't permit, or RBI says it doesn't permit. But RBI's original position was this is not assured return, this was just downside protection. When it gave this position to the government of India, that position was shot down by the government of India. And actually on matters of capital convertibility, the Reserve Bank is an instrument, a delegatee of the government's powers. It just implements the sovereign's powers. It doesn't claim autonomy there. So therefore, my question is, how will this case proceed? RBI, in all probability, will say, as you said, that it is merely obeying the law in terms of protection of dollars inflow and outflow. So what is the next point if RBI makes this case? Will it seek the government's permission and then allow this arbitral award? How will it proceed?
My own sense is that this will be referred back to the Government of India, Ministry of Finance, and they will take a call after taking into account the arbitral award, the Delhi High Court remarks, and all the facts and circumstances of the case, particularly when there is so much of emphasis that India is now putting on FDI. And so I think it will finally boil down to transnational...
No, Shailesh, I'll tell you when this Reserve Bank request went saying that this should be allowed, it is not assured return, it is only downside protection. It was immediately after the Prime Minister came back from his first visit to Japan. It very much looked like, this is a Japanese company and India is actually interpreting the law in a way that it favors foreign investors, yet the government shot it down. So, I mean, my point is, therefore, will the government have to be impleaded in this case?
No. I don't think the government needs to be impleaded. It is a question of RBI referring for policy direction to the government. And I don't think we should read too much into the date of the Prime Minister's visit to Japan or the fact that he instantaneously briefs the Finance Ministry on what he discussed there or vice versa. So I think we should leave that out of debate and we should focus on facts, law, and what the true position in India can be.
So, Shailesh Haribhakti, hold your thought there. Let me also get in Suhas Tuljapurkar, who's waiting on the line as well. Suhas, good to have you on the show. So, first, your thoughts on Delhi High Court directing Reserve Bank of India of clarifying its powers, whether it can really go against an arbitral award which has been given overseas. And the second very important point, which Shailesh was also talking about, was the autonomy of Reserve Bank of India, which has been questioned by the Delhi High Court. And they've said that probably Reserve Bank of India is acting at the behest of the Finance Ministry. Here, Lata ma'am will also come in about what RBI has clarified. But first, your thoughts.
In my view, I don't think that that there is any impropriety in the Delhi High Court asking RBI to clarify the position. The second aspect and more important aspect, what needs to be looked at is the bilateral investment treaties and therefore India's obligation under the bilateral investment treaties. When a foreign investor looks at investing in India, he is protected individually under the bilateral investment treaties. The bilateral investment treaties very clearly articulate the state's regulatory powers. So long as these regulatory powers are exercised in non-discriminatory matters, And these are protecting legitimate public interest and public policy. And that's where the Indian Arbitration Act comes in. If an arbitral award passed by a foreign court or in an international commercial arbitration, if that award is against India's public policy, it ceases to be unenforceable. And therefore, if the price protection given, whether it is downside protection or whether it is ceiling protection, whatever is the price protection given under the option agreement, if that is in conformity with RBI regulations or not, RBI is the best judge to therefore say whether such award is against public policy or not. So there is no impropriety in that. Having said that, you see, India has tried to modify the bilateral investment treaties.
Okay.
It came out with a model bilateral investment treaty in 2015, early 2016. And it therefore brings in this element that the regulatory powers are therefore akin to public policy. At particular point in time when Docomo invested, I don't think India's bilateral investment treaty had this linkage clearly established.
Okay. Well, very quickly, just 30 seconds. So, Sailesh, your point is that on March 14th, RBI will seek government advice and then present its case?
I think this will be handled more routinely than we anticipate.
Sorry, come again?
This will be handled more in due course or routinely, as it is called in regulatory parlance, rather than with any great degree of concentrated effort.
Okay.
It will be referred, will come back, it will go to the High Court. High Court will take a final call at the end of the matter.
All right. Okay, we'll watch with interest what happens on March 14th. Chances are we will get at least a final word on whether the Tatas are able to settle the spat with Docomo. That will be important from a Tata investor point of view. Thank you very much, Sailesh Haribhakti and Suhas Tulsapurkar. Well, that's it on this special edition of After the Bell. Markets Today in a minute.